Samsung maybe is losing its identity a little bit, but if that identity wasn't selling as many phones as other people, why not just kind of conform to something that is performing better with consumers?
There are still different shapes, there are still different cases, there are still different colorways that are unique to each brand, even when they try to be as conformist as possible, because a watch has always been a fashion statement, a phone is something to be used.
For now.
For now.
Yeah.
So I saw this a little bit differently, just because Samsung, even though it's not a lot of things, what Samsung is doing is what Apple's been promising to do from the moment it introduced Apple Intelligence.
It's quite interesting to me, comparing to what we're seeing elsewhere in the market, what Samsung has done here, because it seems to be mostly iterative updates to existing features, right? With a couple of new bits thrown in. Is that correct?
Yeah.
No one wants to commit. No one wants to commit. Welcome, everyone, to the 12th episode of the TechRadar podcast. My name is Josephine Watson, and I'm joined today by Hamish Hector.
Hello!
Lance Ulanoff.
Hi.
Axel Metz.
Hello.
And Matt Evans.
Hi!
This week, we'll be talking through all the devices announced at Samsung Galaxy Unpacked, where we got our first look at the newest flagship phones. We'll be discussing all of the new design and hardware upgrades, the latest news on Galaxy AI features, and looking ahead at the retinue of confirmed and rumoured devices from the brand's wider ecosystem, including its long-awaited Ballie home robot, Project Moohan, and Samsung Galaxy Ring 2. Instead of in case you missed it this week, I'm going to pass straight to my co-hosts who have actually already seen and tested the devices to give the full lowdown. So Lance, you've been testing the Samsung Galaxy Ultra so far. Let's start with you.
Yeah, so the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra is a big step forward in design because it finally makes it part of the Galaxy S family. You know, the Ultra line really kind of came from Galaxy Note, right? It was like they took their Galaxy Note and said, now you're part of the Galaxy S line. This is the Ultra, but you won't look the same. And one of the big differences on the Ultra line is that you have that S Pen inside of it. So I always felt like, oh, maybe they have to have a different design just to accommodate that pen. Well, on the S25 Ultra, it looks like part of the family. It's got a flat a band around the outside edges, flat front, flat back. And at a quick glance, it looks very much like the rest of the S25 line, but does still have room for that S Pen that slides right inside of it. So I'm glad about that. And it still has that premium look and feel because it's still titanium. So it's obvious, and it's a little bit squarer at the corners than the other devices. It's also bigger than any of them. In fact, it's the biggest Ultra yet because they did something similar to what Apple did with their Max phone, is that they took the bezel and made it a little thinner, about 15% thinner. So now you have a 6.9-inch display. So it's big, it's bold, it's redesigned. It actually still and it's lighter too. Somehow they made it lighter. It feels really good in the hand, but it doesn't have that older signature Ultra / what was Note look.
Really interesting. And what does this sort of mean for Samsung's phone design going forwards? Do we think that they're all going to look the same now, or do you think they might start branching out a little bit more on some of the other devices?
It's funny how everything just sort of slides to the middle. I mean, it's just, we're taking pictures of these new phones and I'm looking back at them and going, which one is that? Which one is that? I don't know which one I'm looking at. And by the way, sometimes I have quite a fair amount of phones on my desk. And sometimes I'll look at them and I'll go, is that an iPhone? Is that a Galaxy? Is that a Pixel? Is that so the fact of the matter is that it's getting harder and harder to define yourself by design in the smartphone space. You end up with finding the kind of the features and the feel that the majority of consumers like, and you slide right toward that. And that's what they're all doing, and that's really what Samsung has done here. And that's nothing against it. I mean, it's really cleaned up the design too. Even so, on the Fold in some previous Galaxy S phones, they had an island for their cameras. The island has been slowly disappearing, and it still exists on the Galaxy Z Fold 6, but now on the S25 Ultra, there's no island. The lenses, which seem larger than ever, 3 of them, they almost float above the back of the phone. There's a the tiny millimeter of gap between the ring of the lens and the flat back of the body. So I think that on the fold, in the future, on the fold and the flip, you'll see something similar where they really don't, no island, just rings that maybe lift up a bit.
Interesting.
Just to go back on the design point you mentioned, Lance, I think there is such thing as peak design, or at least a design that is most popular with users at any given time. And I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with brands going for that if that's what's working. So Samsung maybe is losing its identity a little bit, but if that identity wasn't selling as many phones as other people, why not just kind of conform to something that is performing better with consumers? And Google did the similar thing with the Pixel series. I mean, it has still got the camera bar, the Pixel 9, which is very Pixel.
Yeah.
But it has, again, got these kind of rounded sides. And they're all sort of, if you took the cameras away, all three of these kind of main brand flagships would kind of look identical now.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Axel, I'm betting you wouldn't remember this, but the glory days of the Nokia feature phone, where designs were all over the map. I mean, insane designs. There was one phone that looked like I think we called it the lipstick case phone because it was so long and thin, no screen, like maybe the tiniest little screen. They didn't care. They just would be like, how about this design? How about that design? So that was kind of the glory days of try anything. But to your point, and I think you're very right about this, they didn't really know what consumers wanted at that time. They just figured they'd give things a shot. But now, because the experience is so centered on the screen, that really everything else kind of falls behind that. The screen first, what comes next?
And we're seeing that as well. Obviously, Samsung just demoed at CES their trifold concept as well, didn't they? It's the screen is what's important here. It's whether or not you fold, whether or not you flip, whether or not you have a regular phone slate. The rest of it is just part of the course. But we had this conversation last year a little bit about various pieces of tech. It would be nice to see some cool things happening there in terms of differentiation. But who's the audience apart from us tech enthusiasts?
Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with people want things that blend in nowadays.
Yeah.
Like an everyday thing like a phone that you use everything for. People don't necessarily want it to be super standout-ish. And if you do want something that's a bit bolder, then go for a fold, which is still quite eye-catching, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think wearables are really where self-expression comes in a bit more these days because they are wearable, they're a fashion item as much as anything else.
Yeah, there's a lot more difference in just the way, even when you look at the flagship smartwatches, like a Pixel watch doesn't look like a Samsung Galaxy watch, which doesn't look like an Apple Watch. Even though all wearables do start to look the same up to a point when you start to look at the black screens, you wish you had some identity. There are still different shapes, there are still different cases, there are still different colorways that are unique to each brand, even when they try to be as conformist as possible, because a watch has always been a fashion statement, a phone is something to be used.
For now.
For now.
10 years ago, that was true for the phones.
Yeah, do you not see the Honor handbag foldable phone from a couple of years ago, Ethan?
Did we see
That's a
Did we
fashion
see
statement,
that?
man.
Yes.
Yeah, so was the actual fashion show that went along with the demo, which was it was interesting. That was
Yeah, it was a mad one. But something I did want to ask is, because even though you talk about the all the different flagships being fairly conformist, Samsung's the only one with a stylus embedded inside the phone out of the Pixel, the Apple, and the Samsung. How is it to use on a candy bar phone? Because I can see the appeal on a foldable, but I never really used a Note, and I can, with such a limited screen, even at 6.9 inches, how is it? What's it like?
It's funny because I'm the minute I get some implement in my hand like that, I'm going to try drawing with it. And so I pulled the stylus out. They said, there are no physical changes to the stylus, with the exception of Bluetooth Low Energy was removed because of some long distance control stuff they don't think is important anymore. But drawing with it, it's incredibly responsive. That is a big enough canvas. I go back to when the first iPhone came out, and it was a 3.4-inch display, and there were some early art apps and people were drawing with their fingers, and there was a magazine cover the New Yorker did that had been drawn on the iPhone. And so I think the reality is when you have 6.9 inches across, that's enough for a sketchbook, really. And that stylus, even though it's quite thin, feels fine in the hand. It works, and I like using it.
Well, the Samsung's had like a decade-long partnership with Wacom as well, which is the biggest pen display, pen tablet, graphics tablet manufacturing company, I think, in the world comfortably. Most professionals use them. And it's not been confirmed to my knowledge that that's the same partnership that's gone into the S Pen for the Ultra, the S25 Ultra, but I would assume it is, right?
I would guess that because they, so on the folds, they're still partnered up with them. The reason that the fold works the way it does with the pen is because of the Wacom technology in part. So I would assume that it does because it's one of the ways I think that they can have not have to have the power inside the pen itself. But I also cannot 100% confirm that.
Yeah. If that is the case, then you'll be expecting the same performance levels. I mean, Wacom makes styluses better than anyone.
Yeah, and I think in light of what we were just saying about design, it is one way that Samsung can stay Samsung for now. You know, if people want a stylus, then they know that the Ultra is always gonna have one. It has one for now.
Yeah.
So yeah, still a novelty, I think, worth keeping.
Further pressure for Apple to finally let us use the Apple Pencil on the iPhone.
Although I think it's too unwieldy for the iPhone. I think the thing that's like really nice about
I think it is too.
They need to have like an Apple an iPhone pet stylus, really, and they love making more things to sell. Make that to sell.
Would be amazing. That would be amazing.
I wanted to move on to talk a little bit about hardware because although it's only been iterative updates this year, there have been some upgrades that are worth highlighting. Axel, could you run us through them?
Yeah, so again, as with most of the launches we've seen this year, it's kind of software over hardware priority-wise. But the base models at least have more RAM this year. It's 12 instead of 8, which should help some of those AI features perform a little bit better than last year.
Nice.
And then obviously the big kind of upgrade is a 4 Galaxy version of Qualcomm's Snapdragon 8 Elite chipset.
Okay.
So Samsung is saying that that's going to give you, slightly overclocked, better performance than you'll find in the other Android phones that already have that chipset. I mean, that is already a supremely powerful chipset. So, yeah, that's the kind of key thing that is going to allow the phone to do all of these other Galaxy AI software features that we'll talk about in a minute, which are really like forming the key marketing push this year, as it will do the rest of the year. So there's also I think in all three, a larger vapor cooling chamber for gaming. So
nice.
Yeah, partnered up with the chipset that should facilitate better gaming, but
and keep it cooler at least.
And keep it cooler, yeah. So
there's also that thing in the vapor chamber. There's the TIM over it. This other piece of material that they're putting on there that it's like.
I thought you said Tim, and I thought you meant Tim.
It was called Tim. It was like thermal something material.
Oh, like an acronym.
Yeah, it's like a thermal. Yeah, it's a thermal material, and I can't remember exactly.
I remember them saying Tim as well. And
here's me thinking that you were just talking about Tim Coleman, our cameras editor, just pasting him in the back of the phone for some reason.
Put a little bit of Tim in every phone.
I am not. I am not. It's a thermal interface material.
Okay.
Tailored Tim.
Tailored
nice.
Tim, that's quite nice.
Yeah.
I hope they make a little mascot for that, and I hope it does look like Tim Coleman.
Josie, what do you use to stream video content?
My phone, why?
And what about web browsing?
My phone, why?
Banking, email, shopping?
Yeah, all on my phone. What is going on?
Then you should be using a VPN, specifically NordVPN, the sponsor of today's episode of the TechRadar podcast.
I knew it. Who put Hamish in ad read mode again?
Whatever you use your phone for, NordVPN can help protect your privacy and keep you safe online by encrypting your online traffic. Changing your IP address makes you harder to track when using public Wi-Fi in airports, hotels, and cafes, and helping you to keep safe and protect your personal data no matter where you are.
With servers in 113 countries, NordVPN is an easy choice, and in our testing, it was incredibly successful at unblocking content, providing you speeds that will allow you to watch shows without fear of buffering. NordVPN came out on top of our VPN testing for 2024, and we've got an exclusive deal to our loyal podcast listeners. To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/techradar. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box. That's nordvpn.com/techradar.
You good, Josie? Sounds like you went into ad read mode again.
Anyway, thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring this episode. So let's move on to talk about the AI, because I think that's, from what you guys have said so far, it's quite interesting to me comparing to what we're seeing elsewhere in the market, what Samsung has done here, because it seems to be mostly iterative updates to existing features, right? With a couple of new bits thrown in. Is that correct?
Yeah.
No one wants to commit. No one wants to commit.
I think there are like a few new things. So I think like the main one, which I guess I kind of get where you're coming from. It doesn't feel entirely new. It is Now Brief. They also said Now Bar, so I'm trying to make sure I don't mix up the two.
Okay.
Now Brief, basically it's a little morning brief, or you can also set it up, I think it can appear like 3 times a day, so like morning, afternoon, evening. It gives you a little rundown through your whole day. So you can look at your calendar and say, okay, you've got this event coming up, make sure you remember to do that. Or you've got an event coming up in a few days, so you want to maybe get prepared. It can go through your emails and be like, oh yeah, you didn't reply to this important message. It can, if you've got coupons in your Samsung wallet, it can say, okay, this is going to expire in a couple of days or expire today, go and use it. And it can give you a little rundown of everything. And that sort of cross multi-app use seems pretty handy. It can also combine with your other like Samsung devices. So if you're wearing like a Galaxy Watch or a Galaxy Ring, it can, in the morning, it can say, oh, you're well rested today, so you want to go and work out a little bit harder, or vice versa. You've not well rested, so maybe take things a little bit easier. And in the evening, if you've set your target to be, you want to do 10,000 steps a day, if you've only got up to 8,000, it can say, oh, by the way, you've not quite hit your target yet. Maybe walk a little bit more if you want to do that. And so that could be useful for people to keep on top of everything in their busy life. And this push to have your AI be a little bit more, not just doing have your AI not just go into one app when you instruct it to, but be able to manage multiple apps at once. I mean, another quick thing they showed was someone being able to instruct Galaxy AI to make notes in Samsung Notes about a YouTube video. So that's using 2 different apps at the same time.
Okay.
And that's sort of new, but get where you're coming from, like an iteration of what we've seen before of just giving the AI a little bit more power to do a little bit more stuff.
And I think that's the best use of it, right?
Yeah.
I don't think Samsung are under the same pressure this year to debut all of this kind of generative, arguably gimmicky stuff. They were the first last year to kind of go with this big suite of AI features, and then everyone we saw after that, Google, Apple, whatever, kind of riffed on those features. So I'm glad it's kind of relatively iterative this year, and it's about prioritizing software that actually helps your everyday life, and like you said, Hamish, working with different apps.
I would say, so I saw this a little bit differently, just because Samsung, even though it's not a lot of things, what Samsung is doing is what Apple's been promising to do from the moment it introduced Apple Intelligence, this sort of cross-platform gathering of information to sort of come up with a synthesized, useful whole. Reaching across into Google's apps, reaching across into its own apps, combining those on the fly to give you a result. It's literally what Apple keeps saying, yeah, we're going to get that. And the other thing is that in the personal data engine that they keep talking about, which is related to your morning brief, or your now brief, it's day brief, night brief, that's also something that Apple's been kind of promising to do, is like to have an awareness of all these things on your system and then make use of that, which they're still not really doing. And Samsung's kind of like jumping ahead and going, yeah, we're doing it. We created a special space on silicon to keep your data safe, but that's where on device, not in the cloud, it's going to learn about you and then kind of spit that out into these proactive briefs. So I feel like this is a moment where Samsung is running while Apple is kind of taking slow, methodical, almost casual steps to get to what they promised us almost a year ago.
That point about Samsung even taking over Apple is something that really felt from the presentation, because I feel like for years Apple's goal has not been to just sell you an iPhone. It's been to sell you an iPhone and an Apple Watch and a MacBook because of all those extra integrations you get from the way they work together. And Samsung has kind of gone, well, we sell loads of really cool tech too that can all work together. Let's finally do that. So yeah, with your whole suite of Samsung devices, you can now, they mentioned briefly in this little early demo that we've been to about how the AI can learn your preferences. So maybe it learns you like to watch a certain TV show. It can tell when you've fallen asleep because you're wearing a Samsung Galaxy Ring, And because you're using a Samsung TV, it can send a message to your TV to turn off.
Yeah.
And so you don't miss out on the rest of your show. And it's like, on the one hand, that's, I guess, kind of fun and cool, and this continuation of this Internet of Things that's Apple's been trying to do in the background in its own way. But also, I guess, I don't know, the way you're looking, Matt, is like a little creeping you out a little bit.
Well, this was always going to be the end kind of game, especially for a company that like Samsung. Apple, as you said, Apple does, they want you to have an iPhone, an Apple Watch, a MacBook, an iPad, possibly an Apple TV. Samsung do fridges.
Yeah.
Samsung do smart mattresses.
Robot vacuums.
Yeah. They've got a much larger suite of these devices, this like much broader Internet of Things network where everything has the potential to sync together in that kind of, to give that kind of feeling you got in, whenever I always think of the first Iron Man film when you watch when
Jarvis.
sort of he's asking Jarvis to turn the lights on, he's like playing music, hiding his projects when somebody else walks into the room, and all these kind of it's doing all these kind of different things on a single interface. That's kind of has always been the end game for Samsung, I feel.
But the thing that's even more interesting about what Samsung's doing is they're kind of skipping over the voice control bit as much as possible, right? They've got Bixby, they've done the voice control side of things. They're going straight to automation based on data. So that personalization aspect where your home isn't your assistant, it's just doing things for you. And we talked about this a little bit in the last episode where it was about the smart things side of things. Like they are kind of basically trying to position themselves where they're consolidating all of their ecosystems to just work together without you doing anything. And I see where Lance is coming from in that it does feel like a bit of a what's the saying? A rush to the end, like a rush to the funnel. What is that saying?
Race to the bottom.
Race to the bottom. There we go.
On the house point, they've been working on this for a long time. Like a couple of years ago, we went to Korea for the launch of one of the more recent phones. And as part of a factory tour in Suwon, where the Samsung HQ is, they have a Samsung house, which is full. Everything is Samsung.
Well, they have one. They have one in north of London.
Oh, do they?
Yeah,
well, there you go.
we're going to it.
You walk in and
That's where we did our demo.
No, that's King's Cross. That's King's Cross. They have an actual apartment in, I can't remember where. We're going there in a couple of months.
Classic, the windows open.
Yeah.
You go into the fridge, it shows you what's in the fridge, it suggests what's to cook. You choose something, it turns the oven on automatically and boils the water. It's phenomenal. So they really, that utopian vision, they've had that for
I was impressed by the place where we did our demo because they just had like a full-on kitchen and a little robot vacuum going around. Okay.
Yeah,
I need to see this in-depth one.
My favourite use case they've shown so far actually is one that I don't think you guys got shown on the phone side of things. But one of the use cases they mentioned that I don't know why it just made me cackle at the idea of it is that you put a Samsung Galaxy tag on your dog. And then your robot vacuum can monitor how often your dog's barking and potentially give you tailored breed-specific suggestions on the health and well-being of your dog with those devices alone. So have you walked this dog enough? Is your dog barking a lot? Maybe your dog is sad. I like that as an idea, but it's also hellish that we buy a pet.
What a nosy vacuum.
Yeah.
Who needs such a nosy vacuum? Mind your own business. First of all, you suck. Now go someplace else and mind your own business.
When I tested that vacuum as well, I have to say, the first one I got did have a bug and they returned it and they were great about it. It's all detailed in my review. But the funniest thing about it was I turned on the bark detection just out of curiosity to try it by playing barking sounds over my laptop speakers and see if it picked it up. And it did. I forgot to turn it off and the robot vacuum then proceeded to tell me that there were 150 dogs barking at 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't have a dog. No one in my building has a dog, and certainly not one barking at 4 o'clock in the morning. So we are still a ways off of this vision of the future that they've got. Yeah. However, I think that's an interesting time to pivot across at looking forward at some of the things they are potentially releasing this year or that we know they're releasing this year. Now, for the viewers' benefit, we are recording this a couple of days before Unpacked, so there might have been a mention or two of some of these devices and we might know more information, but we don't think that's necessarily going to be the case. So I want to start by thinking about things like Ballie, Project Moohan, Samsung Galaxy Ring 2. You're already going for Ballie.
I just like that. It's just a little ball thing.
He's just a little guy.
I saw all the videos of it. What is it?
He's just a little guy.
What does it do?
It's just a guy. It's just a little guy.
No,
Okay, so here's a
I
robot.
wish
Here's a
it was
home
guy. It's literally a
assistant.
ball.
Here's a home. It is okay. Let's also not gender robots because they are not
Sorry.
people. It is a ball, a yellow ball called Ballie, and he runs around your house. He gives you little chats with you. You can ask him what you want to do. It's basically an AI assistant. It's a smart speaker on wheels,
Okay.
but also can do
It has a
projecting.
projector, right? Doesn't
It
it have a
does.
projector built in?
go on
It
the
has
floor, right?
projector, it can do mapping, so it can like map your walls and it can be like, okay, this size screen is fine on this wall, but on this wall you can fit a bigger screen. So maybe this is a good one for quickly showing you information, this is a good one for showing you video. We are not sure if the demo we saw was like a fully operational thing or if it was like some sort of teleoperated bit deal. That's often the case at tech shows, right? It's easier to demo something when you know it's going to work. But what was that?
Tesla.
I
Let's,
think I'll do it. I think I mentioned at CS when there's a Sony guy called out a car, and it's like you don't want the car to not stop when you tell it to stop at a big tech show.
I think there's the small difference between like doing something that is genuinely like a next generation revolutionary thing, like a walking humanoid robot, versus teleoperating a small robot on wheels when we know that tech works. We've seen them before. You had one in your box for the Christmas
I
episode.
was about to say, is it a similar thing to that?
It's more. It's not got the sort of like face side of things. It's not being made more human, and I don't get the sense that they're really trying to anthropomorphize it too much either. Like it's not your friend. It's not like the LG affectionate intelligence thing. It's a bit more like cool future
Do we know
robot
how much
sci-fi.
it costs? Do they tell you?
No.
And isn't it like the size of a basketball? It's not like a little ball. It's at least basketball size.
So I'm still struggling to understand what it's for. So you've got this ball that follows you from room to room or comes when you call it, and it tells you things like if you asked a smart speaker a question, and it's got a projector.
Yeah, probably says things like, "Are you really going to wear that?"
Yeah.
It can also project things onto the floor as well, like interfaces for
Samsung
you
products
to
to buy more.
Right.
Samsung products to buy. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, this TV would fit here. It only costs
Cool.
$4,000.
Rolling advert machine.
Yeah, which again is just an Alexa on wheels, basically, or another smart speaker, unbranded smart speaker on wheels. That is kind of all they can be at this stage, right? Until we have functioning arms that we know aren't going to wield weapons against us. I think that's the
You're
best
the
we
one that's
can
been
hope.
calling for them to wield weapons.
Look, I didn't. That was only in the setting. No, I didn't want an arm. I wanted to strap a knife onto a robot vacuum.
Why?
That's
In case there was a serial killer in my house. Look, it's not the
Semantics.
Halloween episode. Let's not get back into this. But I still stand by my plan. What else do you guys think is like among the most exciting of Samsung's upcoming tech this year?
I mean,
Probably
classic
Moohan, probably.
VR.
It's got to be
fan.
the Moohan Project
right?
Moohan, right?
Yeah. Lance, you've had a little bit of time in a room with it. You've not tried it, obviously, but what was the vibe of the room when you saw it?
I mean, basically, Project Moohan is it's another mixed reality headset. It's a probably a much cheaper version of the of like Vision Pro. It's I think that it's a partnership between Samsung and Google, and so and we've been waiting forever for this thing to show up. So it's going to show up sometime this year, but at this point it's just in developers' hands. But it's got the hand tracking. It has all of the things that you would expect and works. I mean, honestly, it works a lot like the Vision Pro. But again, this is the kind of thing that I'm still not sure. It's interesting and it's important, but it's not going to be the kind of thing that's for everyone. Because once again, how often do you want to wear it? What's really going to be important is what comes next from this platform, because it's built on the new Google Android XR platform, and that platform is important because that's also going to drive the next version of glasses. And glasses are what people really care about because they don't actually want to wear goggles. They want to wear glasses that will augment their reality and provide them with information. So this arriving at some point in this very near future means that the glasses are going to follow fast behind and fast after it, and that's what people are going to be interested in.
But I think in the context of, as well, the rest of the products they're releasing this year, I can kind of see both of them having perhaps a better fate even than the Vision Pro, dare we say. What are your thoughts, Hamish?
I mean, for me, the glasses are going to be their own separate thing, I think, because everyone's kind of at this same stage of trying to work out exactly what smart glasses should look like with and without AR features. But from this more like virtual reality, mixed reality side where you've got goggles and a headset, for me, it's not going to be about the hardware. It's going to be about what can that device do that you can't. Well, it depends how much it costs as well, because it depends how much it can do compared to like the Quest, because Meta has spent a lot of money making the Quest operating system fantastic in terms of how clean and easy it is to use and the quality of the software you can get on that system, with various exclusives that are either actually only exclusive to Quest, or if they are on a few other platforms, it's sporadic, but everything is on Quest. And, you know, I've spoken to some other headset makers that will go unnamed who are frustrated at that because they can't afford to spend, or not even spend, to hemorrhage billions of dollars on something. And they'd be like, you know, they kind of have this sense of, well, it's not fair. But I sort of turn around and say, well, okay, I know it's not fair, but as someone trying to recommend consumers tech, at the end of the day, the software on this system is fantastic. You can only play Batman Arkham Shadow on a Quest 3 or Quest 3S. So I'm really sorry, like, as great as your headset is,
The games aren't there.
the games and the software isn't there. And so the same thing for me is going to be with, if they're going to focus on the VR side of Android with their new platform, fantastic. You need to throw money at the problem. And I think that's something that Apple could have done, but didn't really do with the Vision Pro, because the Vision Pro has some phenomenal specs. And yeah, $3,500's a lot to spend. But if they'd come out and said, like, here's why you should spend $3,500 on it. Here's some fantastic tools that you can only use on Vision Pro, I think it could have landed better. But when you look at it and you go, well, you know, a lot of the apps are ports from other systems, or, you know, if you want to use it for computing purposes, you've kind of got to pair it up with a MacBook, and you go, well, okay, I'm losing a little bit of interest in this. But yeah, if Android can look at that, if Samsung and Google can look at that and say, okay, we know what we're going to make. We're going to make Android be this system that you really have a reason to use, then I think that could be powerful. And then, yeah, on the AR side, I think everyone's in that same boat. So hopefully they've all learned from that and they'll give some cool AR uses.
Can I ask a quick question just directly to Hamish about what he just said there? Because it occurs to me that what this might boil down to for success in the mixed reality space is that if you want to succeed, you probably need to first succeed by being an excellent gaming VR headset with a few killer games on it, and everything else after that kind of falls into place. Is that true?
I think that's definitely worked for Quest. I think if you could, and I think because gaming in terms of the consumer, like the mass market, is something that's a little bit easier to attain, whereas like something like productivity, more people I feel like would instantly lean towards grabbing a laptop. So I think that entertainment focus, maybe even not just gaming, but entertainment in general.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think, as someone who's like not super into my VR, the appeal of VR for me lies in gaming and entertainment. Like, how can I enhance these experiences? Spatial computing, personally, I don't yet see why that's something I would want to commit to or want to do. Like, I mean, Lance, you have used the Vision Pro and I think maybe still have it. How often do you spatially compute?
Sorry, there's something about that.
Is Apple, wait a minute, is Apple watching this podcast?
I spatial compute every day. My wife hasn't seen my eyes in months.
Well, she has. She's
That's not his eyes.
I would love to say that I am spending all my time in it, but that's simply not true. And for the reason that you described, it's like, my family member does not want to walk into a room and find me wearing that thing all the time. It freaks them out, and it also cuts me off from outside experiences. It is a very, very powerful platform, and when I use it, I always enjoy it, but it's not practical to use all the time. And that's, if I spend $3,500 on something, it better be practical to use every single day.
Yeah. No, it's a murky future. I think, like you say, the smart glasses are kind of the way to go. I'm excited by it from the perspective of if they do move quickly to consolidate their different ecosystems and make everything work really nice and seamlessly. Like, imagine if you did have the Project Moohan headset, whatever it might come out like. You had that, and then you have Ballie, and you can remote control Ballie from like you can like explore your house in AR VR. That would be so
like
cool.
FPV mode, like you're through it.
Exactly. Like, you know, if they did what Amazon's done and give it like a little periscope camera as well,
that's both
you could look
cool
around your
and
house.
creepy.
It's awful.
Josie,
I love
remember,
it.
it's at ground level.
I know,
it's
but
at ground level looking up at people. I don't think that's a great idea.
But if they did make some sort of periscope camera like what Astro supposedly has, it would be hilarious.
Because what Josie's thinking is she's out and about. She gets a little alert that some intruders broken in. So she straps on her headset. Ballie's already got the knife attached.
Already, unicorn
so she
style.
could go in and just go and...
But that then means you're out and
protect her
about and
home.
you've got this headset on your person.
I love this whole visual. This is amazing.
But it's an interesting one. We'll see. I do want to talk about the Samsung Galaxy Ring 2 a little bit. So obviously, as of recording, we haven't seen anything. We don't know anything. Last year, Unpacked, we did get the first glimpse, but we didn't know much about specs or anything then. So even if we do get a first glimpse, it's likely that we're not going to know any more than we know right now. But what do you think might be the case as we look forward to the potential future of the Galaxy Ring?
I think it is in Samsung's best interests to bring out a second generation of hardware because people will buy it. But I can't see, unless there's significant improvement in heart rate sensor technology, like what Aura's done with the Aura Ring 4, when they've got lots of different pathways, and they're going to boast about a more accurate ring, something with better processing tools, something with bigger battery life, all the practical considerations. Most of the exciting updates, new features, all that sort of thing, because it's such a small device and it's purely used for collecting information rather than displaying information or providing new features. Any new features can be done via software updates within the Samsung Health app. I think, unfortunately, like the ring is really exciting when it comes to a new form factor. It's new, it's shiny, it's something we haven't seen before. Now we have seen it, and it's just making it thinner, making it smaller, making it more accurate. And when it comes to exciting new features, it's just going to be the case of, I think it's all going to be software led.
Yeah, I think I could see them doing something like a very small drop, maybe of a couple more colorways, maybe like alternative charge cases, something like that. But I can't see them doing anything beyond the aesthetic in the immediate
they've already
sense.
done 2 new ring sizes, which then increases the battery life because at size 14 and 15, you've got a little bit more space to squeeze a little bit more battery in.
I mean, that's biased to big-handed people, to be honest. Unfair.
Yeah, unfortunately, the small-handed people top out at like 6 days, and the big-handed people are now up to like 10.
Is that true?
I think so.
They're going to take over. They're going to take over with their extra battery power. Anyway, that aside, was there anything else? I don't know why I'm so afraid of big-handed people now.
Big-handed viewers, I'm sorry. I can't speak for Josie. But in general, obviously we haven't seen it yet, the presentation yet, but if we do get a glimpse of it, last year we only got a tease that it was coming, and the full reveal was in Unpacked in July. So if we get anything, it's going to be a small incremental update, probably formally announcing the stuff we already know about the new sizes and all that kind of thing. And any significant updates will probably be saved for July.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it hasn't even been a year with the first ring. They've got to give it some time.
Do we think they will have one more thing? I mean, viewers who are watching this might have already seen it, but just in case we have any interesting theories. Any other one more thing suggestions?
I mean, mine's on the boring one. I think Axel's going to say now.
Yeah. So, I mean, so you said we haven't actually seen it yet, but the S25 Slim is what we think is going to come this year. So essentially, literally a slimmer version of the S25.
Do we think that this slim phone is going to feature special screen technology?
I think there is going to be some sort of... it's going to be a lower spec phone, I think. So whatever the S25s get, it gets less of, I think.
So it'll be like an SC.
FE,
but
FE,
that's the
but
thing, because they already have the FE.
Yeah.
And that will surely come, S25 FE will come later this year, probably.
maybe they will pack a majority, maybe it will just be the camera specs that drop.
It's interesting, though, that that's not really something people have called for a long time, like thinner phones. Phones have kind of been thin enough for a while. In fact,
They're
some
too thin
flagships
now.
get a little bit bigger and nobody bats an eyelid.
No.
So I'll be interested to see how that does in terms of market performance.
Well, so something to think about here, obviously, because people are talking about thinner iPhones coming, and in Apple world, they took their iPad Pro, the largest ones, and made them thinner than ever, partially with the tandem OLED technology. And so it does seem like there's a little bit of a trend there for making things thin again. No one seems to be afraid of torquing a device and bending it the way it was back in the iPhone 6 Plus days. But I personally think that what we would see from Samsung is this slim with some sort of screen adjustment. I don't disagree that the specs otherwise, like battery life, might be less compared to, because they can fit less battery in there. And it might have maybe a standard Gen Elite in there. But I do think that they might do something special with the screen to really make it almost like, why do you need this ultra thin Samsung Galaxy S?
And then I guess there's one other quick thing I wanted to throw down before we close out today's episode, which is, I don't know if you guys have seen this because I didn't brief any of you on it, but it came up on my radar this morning. The AI subscription club that Samsung has announced. It's exclusive to South Korea in the immediate sense, but it's basically a subscription program where you can try their different AI-powered devices to sort of get to grips with them, I guess, and potentially also, well, obviously for them, it's to try and convince you to buy them, right? And it looks like it's going to be eligible for a wide range of products, potentially including Ballie. That to me is quite interesting.
I just had this vision of a Ballie that's been passed among many users and possibly abused. And
No!
why
Don't
is
make
this
me
Ballie quivering every time I come near it?
Seen
You
it.
know?
Please don't make me think of a traumatized Ballie. I love it so much. It
Sorry.
will break my heart.
It's for life,
Go
not just
ahead.
for
Because
Christmas.
I got because when you mentioned like an AI subscription club, I was thinking about how you eventually have to pay for Google Gemini when your phone's old enough,
Yeah.
because they need to fund those AI servers running non-stop all the time, and we can ignore some of the environmental impacts of that for the moment. But this is an actual like hardware subscription,
To the sounds of it, yeah.
Netflix but classic, where they
So
send you the
get hardware
products
Well,
rather
as
than
it's-
get
well.
features on your phone.
It's like a rental service more than anything else. So you pay a monthly fee to rent the latest AI devices to make the cutting edge tech more accessible. And there's also optional maintenance services as part of the subscription. So your Ballie will not come to you with PTSD.
I mean,
That's not unheard of in the fitness space. Peloton runs that. Peloton do a subscription service where you pay £30 a month or whatever, and you basically rent the bike, and it gives you access. I don't know whether I imagine you pay separately for the subscription for the content, as you would do if you owned the Peloton bike. But if you decided you were moving house to a smaller space, and you're like, I cannot bring this huge thing with me, which is now an expensive clothes rack, then Peloton will, you can stop paying the subscription, and Peloton will organize collection, refurb it, and then give out to somebody else on the same service.
And it works in the fitness sense, I guess, because to people it's like a gym membership, right?
Yeah.
It's an equivalent thing they probably used to the idea of. The idea of doing it to try out tech for the specific benefit of testing AI, I just think is really interesting. I don't think it's a bad idea.
I don't know that it's scalable because, South Korea is a relatively contained place, and it's easier to roll out technology there, because the population's so densely packed in mostly one area. But I think it's more difficult when you try and take that to the UK and the US, especially where everything's so spread out. And again, consumers have to see, even to try things out, they have to see the benefit. And these systems, to get to the point where you're getting that benefit from AI, almost takes some learning from the consumer, which they may not want to invest that in it. So, but it's interesting to me because, once again, Samsung is trying really hard to get people to see the breadth of products they have, the breadth of technology expertise they have, the breadth of AI they have, and the ecosystem that they have just sitting there waiting for you to adopt. But it is so hard to get people to adopt that. And their big target remains, believe me, remains one of the biggest, has to be the US, where they have not really sort of turned the tide so everybody's become a Samsung person. Mostly people in the US are Apple people with iPhones. They may have other Samsung devices, but they start with an iPhone. And until you can get them to swap that out and then build around that, Samsung's going to kind of struggle in that space.
But then I wonder if this could then help with that in terms of maybe not this system of you trial it to then give it back eventually, but having it be, if Samsung's push is to be, okay, to get the most out of our tech, you're going to need our washing machine, our fridge, our TV, our phone, our everything. And some of these devices aren't cheap, you know, if you want like a decent Samsung, or not say decent, like a great Samsung OLED and their washing machine, you'll be spending thousands on products.
Yeah.
Whereas if they can say, okay, instead of dropping, $5,000 in one go, you could spread it out as $100 a month, then that's still a lot to spend each month, but that suddenly maybe becomes a bit more of a better prospect for people and they can kit out their Samsung home. And so maybe it could work in the States of turning people to be more Samsung people because then they have everything in one go.
I think, as Lance says, the operational side of things is definitely where it becomes harder, right? Like, the US is huge, it's very spread out, all sorts of problems, let alone the fact that they're not headquartered there, so they still are relying on hiring people there that know the market. It's not their bread and butter. But it's an interesting idea, and I'd like to see it in person because I'd love to try some of their tech without having to commit to having to buy it.
They should turn some of these homes you've mentioned that Samsung has into Airbnbs. Build a few of them around the country, and you basically spend a week or a month there, and it's nothing but Samsung stuff.
That's the thing that we haven't talked about. I feel like Bixby's being like...
You don't need to talk about Dixon. Anyway,
I feel like he's
ending
been
the
abandoned
episode.
because they talked so much about Google Gemini on the new phones and like how it's integrated.
It's not been abandoned. It was promised a big update last year.
Just the messaging that we're getting from Samsung on Bixby is that it's working hand in hand with Gemini Live. And what's becoming harder to discern is where one begins and the other ends. They seem to be working together. And even the demos that I had, I was sort of like, I didn't know for certain whether I was engaging with Bixby or Gemini Live. And you know what? Consumers won't care. What they'll care about is the results that they get.
I think they should rename it to Bixby or like Gemsby. Well, on that stellar marketing idea from me, thank me later, Samsung, we're going to close out that episode here. Thank you so much to our fabulous panel of experts for joining us today. If you want to see more of our news, reviews, thoughts and opinions on Samsung Galaxy Unpacked and all the latest flagship phones, check out techradar.com or subscribe below. Thanks so much for watching.
Bye.
Bye.
Do the buys.
Bye.
Buys.
We remembered this time.
Yeah, we got there. All right. Deuces.